I will start recording too. All right. Sorry, dudes. All right. There I go. I am sharing now. Okay. Yeah, I believe competitive in the last one, basically, which tends to mean, is the market growing fast or shrinking, right? In a shrinking market, competitors are going to have to try to undercut each other just to stay afloat. In a fast growing market, competitors aren't even going to be able to keep up with demand, so they don't have much incentive to lower their prices. All right. All right, so I believe that's it. And again, you can look at all those factors, but to the extent that any of these exist, right, the presence of each of these 5 factors tends to bring down profits to the industry average for any firm. Okay? If suppliers have a lot of options, customers have a lot of options, if there are substitute products available, if new entrants can easily join the markets, or if the market has more competitive intensity, you know, it's kind of at equilibrium at that point, yeah, all that's going to mean profits are, you know, they're not going to be higher than average. All right. Cool? Yeah.
So what, is the PFF model just like assess that?
Yeah, what it did, he rounded up data over like decades for many, many different businesses and looked at a lot of different variables about the industry and about the firm themselves. And somehow he was able to identify, oh yeah, this is, you know, these are the businesses. Basically, it's like a cluster analysis, right? And so he found, like, he looked at all their profits over time and looked at the attributes of those businesses and said, hey, some of these businesses are making a lot more money than the others. I wonder why. And he identified along these 5 dimensions. So if you do some 5-dimensional cube, the high profit ones would be at one side of it and the low profit ones would be at the other side of it. Basically a cluster analysis. All right. No 5-dimensional math on the exam though, so don't panic. Okay. What else? Anybody out here? You guys got any questions? What's happening? Yeah.
Can you talk about value chains?
Okay. All right, so I'll draw a value chain. We'll draw a simple manufacturing one that I hope will be understandable for everybody. Move you. So here in the middle, we have the manufacturer. So I'll call him MFG, manufacturing. And the value chain's going this way. There we go. Okay. So who does the manufacturer buy stuff from? Suppliers. Very good. And who do the suppliers buy stuff from? Suppliers of the suppliers. We'll call it raw materials, right? So here, raw materials, and then for this one, call this raw mats, and this one we'll call components. All right. Who does the manufacturer sell stuff to? This is a big manufacturer like Ford, right? You don't just walk up to the Ford factory and drive off with your car. So who does Ford sell to? Dealerships, yeah. And let's say there's some sort of intermediate. Let's say they go through a wholesaler and then to retail, right? So we're not specifically concerned with cars here because I drew 5 boxes, but whatever they're manufacturing, they go to a wholesaler, which you can think is like a big warehouse that any of these retail operations can buy from. Okay. Now, let's all agree that these raw materials are more valuable when they're somehow combined into components than they are when they're just, raw metal or whatever. Okay? So that part adds value. Adds value by, fabrication. Not meaning fabrication as lying, fabrication is making something, right? And here, adds value by assembly, right? All those components, they're more valuable when you've taken the time to make a car or whatever than they are as just their isolated raw components. I'm going to shift these over a little bit because it's going to look weird. All right. Ta-da. Over here at the wholesaler, adds value by facilitating purchases. Okay? So it's the manufacturer, their thing is making the cars. They don't really want to be involved in retail. If they did want to be involved in retail, they'd be a retailer. They're not, they're a manufacturer. And retailing, again, adds value by making goods available to end customers, right? The final people who show up and buy. Now, at every stage of this process, there's some value added, right? If there isn't value added at any step, you can fairly ask, why are we doing this, right? So it's called a value chain because each step in the sequence, it costs a certain amount to achieve, but the net outcome is worth more, thus it's adding some value. Now, value chains are composed of two kinds of activities. Okay. Number one, primary. Primary activities are number one, easily measured, right? So for example, you know that if you're this components manufacturer, you know it costs you so much to get the raw materials, it costs you so much to make the components, you get paid so much for every one you sell to the manufacturer. It's really easy to assess how much money you're making there, right? Like manufacturing activities. Secondary ones, if you want to, again, working definition, they make primary activities work better, okay? But also tend to be difficult to measure. So there is value, but I'll say their value also tends to be difficult to measure. Okay, and good examples there. Number one, customer service, right? You need some, but it's easy to go overboard, right? You can always provide a super high level of customer service that is just not worth it to the business. Or what else? Things like advertising. That would be my opinion. If you read other people, they'll say advertising is a primary activity. So I'll say human resources, right? Again, you need some, but how many interviews are enough? Okay, that's pretty much what there is to say about value chains. Yeah. Okay, that's kind of a big topic. Did you have a more specific thing there? What would you like to know? Oh, okay. I will tell you what a recommender system is. So, for example, of a recommender system is Amazon's people who bought this also bought that feature. You've shopped on Amazon, you're familiar with this? That's what it is, right? So, as a general thing, more generally, a recommender system tries to figure out what kind of, let's see, tries to deliver a ranked set of data meeting some description, right? And there's all sorts of different recommendation systems out there. So again, Amazon's is one. Amazon's is generally displayed in, you know, order of likelihood of purchase. Okay, so Amazon and plus value of purchase. So Amazon is going to try, when it shows you those people who bought this also bought that, they're going to probably show you the ones in order that they think they're going to make the most money on, right? Some combination of how much money they make on a purchase and how likely the purchase actually is. So there's that. Other ones like Google search results. You enter in the search terms. Google displays search results in order of what they think you'll use, right? What you'll click on. Things like that. There's all different kinds of recommender systems out there, so I wouldn't, you know, worry too much about that. But yeah, a lot of it is this kind of thing. Basic idea. We don't know exactly what you will like, but we've seen what other people in some sense similar to you have liked. So that's what we'll offer. Okay, so you go to Amazon, all Amazon really knows about you is your purchase history, the particular item you're looking at, right? And so if they're basing it just on that, what they know is you looked at this item, well, let's look at the other people who looked at that item. Other people who looked at that item were interested in these things, so we think you might be too. Or Google search results. If you have a search query that is pretty common, you know, like what are the show times for the new Quantumania movie? You know, Google's got a lot of people looking at search results for that. If you enter that search query, Google says, well, we don't know exactly what you will like, but other people who've put the search in have looked at this stuff, so that's what we're going to give you. Okay, that's the basic idea with recommender systems. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I did right at the start. Is there a specific recap from that you want? Oh, okay. Yeah, I can cover that. So suppose, I mean, it's a little off topic, but I'll take a minute to do that. So suppose your organization recognizes that it has a big problem with data silos. Okay, so, and let's just go with the oil drilling one from the slides. We'll talk about that. So, all the data is there, but different systems have different formats for their tables and fields, right? So ERP will convert all of those to one standard format in one single database. So suppose database one has, you know, let me think of some kind of drilling. I don't really know anything about oil drilling. So let's suppose a drill called the BFD1, okay? And database 2 has the same drill, but called the BFD 2001A. For some reason, they have different encoding for it, right? So in the final database, final ERP database, they would create that table with the same description, or both, right? It might be the first one, it might be the second one, it might be a completely different one, but the point is it would be the same. And once you've done that for all the fields in all the tables, then you can start asking those global questions like, hey, where can I get the most oil anywhere? And you can ask one database that question and not have to reformat the query for every different local database. Yeah. So again, depending on how big your database systems are and how complex the fields are and how many databases have tables and fields that the others don't even have, this can be a fairly simple and painless switch to being kind of a nightmare. And it's why it did often cost hundreds of millions of dollars back in the day. All right. But that's the basic idea with ERP. Oh, okay. I thought somebody pinged me. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So remember, what's the difference between deadlock and live lock? All right, what's the difference? Well, not exactly. I mean, you might have the right idea there, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so deadlock, system just stops and the database operation will eventually time out. Okay, there's some sort of window where if the database operation isn't completed in such and such a time, it'll be canceled, right? But the problem is, of course, with ACID properties, nothing else can happen until it times out, right? So this is one of the things that makes ACID properties very challenging for very large databases, because if deadlock ever happens, then the whole database grinds to a halt for a while. With live lock, yeah, live lock, the system is responding, just not in a way that clears the block. Okay, so again, the everyday example I give is two people walking down a narrow hallway, just room enough for two people. They're walking towards each other, they're on the same side. They get close to each other, they see each other, they're like, oh, I can't get past you, you can't get me. So you try to step to the side. Well, just at that second you step to the side, so does the other person, and you're still blocking each other. And then you're like, what just happened here? And you both step back to the other side where you were before, and you're still blocking each other. Okay, that's live lock. Deadlock is two people walking down a passageway that's one person wide. And then, you know, in true Chicago fashion, you never step backwards, right? You just stand there and stare at each other and glare at each other until finally, you know, one of you dies of old age or something. And then, you know, I guess in a sense that's timing out. All right. If you want a database example, we'll do that. So while I'm doing it for deadlock, right? So suppose you have two operations, A and B, involving two records, U and V, right? A wants to update U, then V, and B wants to update V, then U, okay? If A and B launch simultaneously, and A has locked U and B has locked B, then neither operation can finish, right? Because if A has locked U, then B can't proceed to update U until A is done. But since A can only be done by updating V, well, A can't finish itself because B has already locked V. This is a problem, okay? Now again, if you're doing this sort of thing with isolation, if you're saying either A has to happen first or B has to happen first, right? Yeah, you're probably not going to have that sort of situation happen. But the problem there is, of course, you have to apply that to every transaction. Every database operation has to happen sequentially, which again, in a very large database, is going to slow things down quite a bit. So you always, kind of have options of what might go wrong. All right. So, and I'll add here, that's deadlock. Okay. The other thing, live lock would be if the system somehow recognize the block and maybe try it again after a fixed delay, right? Which of course will not change the outcome, right? So if you had something like, well, the system's not available right now, fine. Both of these operations are going to get canceled. We're going to push them back into the database queue to see if we can try them again in a few seconds. But if you push them both in at the same time again, they're going to happen simultaneously. You're going to have this same problem again just a few seconds later. It's going to keep on repeating. Okay. As always, in a well-designed system, deadlock and live lock should not happen, but what? Not all, there you go. Not all systems are well designed. Okay. And even when they are well designed, I mean, again, there's trade-offs, right? All the work that you have to do to ensure that deadlock is never going to happen, that's going to put some additional delays into your system, which might be a big problem if it's a large, busy system already. Okay. I guess I got time for one more question. What do we got? Anything? Last one? Yeah.
Do you mind going over N-tier architecture?
Okay. Yeah, fine. Okay. So N-tier grew out of the need to update client server systems. Okay, so remember, client server systems, essentially, I'm going to draw a picture like this. So you have, looks like some kind of evil tripod, I guess. All right. It was like a space alien from a 1980 video game. Okay, so this big box is the server, and conceivably the server might be connected to different database systems or different database hardware. But basically, in a client server system, everything the users need has to be immediately available through the server. And remember, the server has a bunch of ports, right? But just like your laptop only has so many USB ports, and sometimes you wish it had more, your server only has so many ports for other devices. So they're either for clients or database machines, right? It doesn't have an infinite number of ports. It doesn't have an infinite number of connections. So if the users need access to more data than can be conveniently supplied through those ports, they're going to have to switch over to a different machine. And again, something like Facebook, right? Facebook has exabytes of photo data. There's no way you're getting, all that on like standard 1 terabyte hard drives. There's no way you're hooking up literally a billion petabyte. I feel like I missed one. Yeah, but there's no way you're hooking up 1 million hard drives to one server, right? You just don't have enough ports for that. So you have to physically disconnect a cable from a port, bring it over to the new machine, and there's probably some policy checks involved with that, whatever. It's a big hassle, so you don't do it, okay? So again, client server was okay as long as all the applications you needed could be run on one machine and all the data that users needed access to could be provided through that one machine without changing connections very often. Okay, but N-tier said, hey, you know what? This is no longer feasible. This is like 1998 and data's getting big and we can't do that stuff anymore. So instead, we have an interface. I'm going to do something neat here in a second. I'm going to flip this. we go. Ta-da. Those are your clients. And again, each of these things has a similar case going to the many, many database machines, right? So there's many database machines, and there's an interface between them. And every server machine can fairly easily connect to any database machine through that interface. That's what N-tier architecture really is. All right, so I'll label this stuff. DBs, servers, clients. So when a client like you or me connects to the system, like Facebook, we don't connect directly to a specific server. We go to the interface at facebook.com. Facebook decides, oh, you are so-and-so, we're going to connect you to this server. And when you need data, it doesn't specifically connect you to a particular database machine. It connects you to this interface that has access to all the database machines. So you can find anything you need to, right? So N-tier, you could just tell by looking at it, it's a lot more complicated to set up and build and manage than client server, but it solves this problem of, hey, I'm a client who might need to use applications that are only available on some servers, not all, and I'm going to need to connect to databases fairly unpredictably, right? In one moment, I might be looking at pictures from my friends from this week, and in the next moment, I might want to go back and look at pictures of my dog from 2009, okay? Can't feasibly do that with client server. You can feasibly do that with N-tier. Okay. Well, cool. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Sorry I didn't start recording a little earlier, but you know, sometimes these things happen. I still haven't posted everything on YouTube, but I'll post this and that and the other and get those all up there today. All right. See you next time.